Hi, my name is Haley Carlson, and this is my video for understanding my school community. And I am going to be talking about Manhattan, Kansas, which is where Manhattan High School is located. So starting out with our sociological inventory, it's estimated, I think this estimation is from 2017, that the population is around 58,000. I'm sure that's increased a little bit, but that was the estimated number for 2017. We are a blended community of agriculture and education. So obviously with K-State being here, that's an agricultural school, but it's kind of moved away from that. And so we're very focused on education in this community. Overall, Kansas is very conservative, but more and more Manhattan, Kansas is pretty moderate. We kind of fall in the middle on a lot of issues, not super conservative or super democratic either. Just kind of depends where we're at. There's a really high cost of living in Riley County, which is where Manhattan falls. And then the median income is estimated at $49,000. I think this was for 2010, so I'm sure it's changed, but that was from around the last census. There's a really low crime rate for when you compare Manhattan to the United States, but it's a pretty high crime rate for Kansas, and that kind of just happens because of the university and Fort Riley being so close. Some customs and traditions. Manhattan is a very active and outdoorsy community. Very health centered, and our local government does a lot to promote that. Our Manhattan Parks and Rec does a lot to promote that as well. Kansas State University carries a lot of traditions with education and sports and different events. A lot of tradition for Manhattan is rooted within the university because the university kind of started the town a little bit, or really grew the town, I guess. Local businesses are heavily supported. So during this COVID-19 crisis, there's been an MHK Love or a Shop Local initiative that started, and there's always been a Shop Local initiative, but it's really increased with this crisis that we have had. So local businesses are everywhere in Manhattan, which is really awesome to see that a lot of the places to go in town are local and they're not chain. It's a really progressive and supportive atmosphere here in Manhattan. Change is handled through debates, discussions, surveys, polls, and voting. Some characteristics of the population. So a really educated community. A lot of people come to Manhattan for their education and then just decide to stay. So we have Kansas State University, we have Manhattan Christian College, we also have Manhattan Area Technical College in our town. All of those bring in people from surrounding towns, from the state, from out of state, kind of everywhere. And so that is a really strong proponent for our educated community. The majority of the population are families aged 20 to 50. So when I was growing up in Manhattan, the population seemed very old, and kind of as I've gotten older, the population seems to be younger. So it's a lot more smaller families moving into town and settling down here in Manhattan. The top employers for Manhattan are K-State, Fort Riley, the healthcare field, construction, and then the public school district here. About 80% of the population is white, and this is from the 2010 census. So I'm sure that it's changed a little bit, but from 2010, 80% of the population is white, 5% is Black, 5% Hispanic, and 5% Asian. So that would leave the other 5% to be some other sort of race. Communication channels. This has really evolved within the last couple of years. So right now it's very social media oriented with Facebook and Twitter, but there is still our daily newspaper, the Manhattan Mercury, There's the Manhattan Broadcasting Company, which KMAN is kind of their popular channel for news, but they have a couple of different radio stations that they broadcast with. Television stations, all of our news stations are out of Topeka, so we don't really have any Manhattan-centered news stations for that, but out of Topeka we do. Broadcast meetings. The school board or the city commission, they will broadcast the meetings that they hold, and then also social gatherings. So just getting information from people that you see out in public in a social setting. Some community groups. So Manhattan is a very involved community. I actually pulled all of these from the community section of our city's website. So it was like a get involved tab and some community groups that there are for our city. So there's the Chamber of Commerce. There is the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation, which focuses on a lot of businesses. And then there's also the Manhattan Business Association, which has little sectors of like downtown, Aggieville, small business, that type of thing. There's the Manhattan Public Library, Manhattan Parks and Rec, the health department, there's boys and girls clubs, there's the zoo, parks and wildlife, because we do have some nature trails around here that fall under that parks and wildlife jurisdiction. But there are lots of community groups. There are even on the city website, you can look up what neighborhood you are in and see if your neighborhood holds events for those people who live in those neighborhoods, which is kind of neat. There's just lots of ways for people to get involved. Leadership, our local city commission, it has 5 members and it's nonpartisan. So when people get elected, they aren't saying whether they're Republican or Democrat. It's just, they're just running and they kind of give their platform, and it's nonpartisan. There's 1 commissioner out of the 5 that's voted as mayor. Our city commission is very progressive, somewhat diverse. There's not a lot of conflict. They seem to really unite well. Our local county commission is 3. It's divided into 3, and that is very partisan. So I think all 3 right now are Republican, and they are more divided traditionally, and there's a lot more conflict when it comes to the local county commission. The local school board, there are 7 total members. They have very diverse backgrounds. So some are education, some are not, some are graduates of Manhattan High, some are not. But they are all very heavy advocates for education, and they work really well with the school, with the district, with the community, in making sure that everything runs smoothly. They have been really, really wonderful. Some community leader characteristics. So I've talked about this a little bit. With the local city commission of 5 members, they are super accessible to the community. They are approachable. They take suggestions frequently. Kind of up until this COVID thing, they would schedule one of them would go to a coffee shop, a local coffee shop in town for a certain amount of time, and you could just go sit and talk with them and get to know them. So they do that, almost weekly here, and that's pretty neat. They're very available to contact and to have discussions with. The local county commission, they're divisive. They're somewhat controversial, especially with this COVID-19 crisis going around. They're very conservative. So they're a little bit, I don't want to say colder, but they are harder to reach. And then our local school board, they're also accessible, approachable, visible, and participating in the community, partnerships with the city, positive relationship with the district, all of that. Economic conditions. So like I said, there's a high cost of living. Manhattan actually falls in 2 counties, so Riley County and then Pottawatomie County, and taxes and really everything is more expensive in Riley County than it is in Pot County. The majority of the population, however, is middle class. There are very few that are really wealthy, and then there are some that are very poor. So we do have the full range, but most people tend to fall in the middle. Our school district has actually passed a bond last year. They passed a $130 million bond for a new elementary school the middle school expansions and then the Manhattan High expansion. And actually 10 years ago when I was in high school, it was the same thing. So it was to improve all of the schools and then expand the high school. So both of those bonds passed fairly easily, and that was an easy decision for the community to make. The political structure. So 383 and local governments do a good job of viewing education without political controversy most of the time. Most of the time it is just student support and rights are not political. They are just a given, and so they are treated that way. The community is really willing to spend a lot of money on education. So locally, at the university level, at the technical college level, our community is very willing to spend money there. So that's not a super big controversy a lot of the time. Social tensions, interracial confrontation comes more through the university in our community than anywhere else, at least at present. I know that on Twitter lately there have been some controversies brought up from the last couple of years that have happened at K-State, but really we don't have gangs. There's really limited violence in our community. People are divided into cliques, but it's by interest, and that's not always negative. There's something for everyone in our community, which is kind of how I guess you could say the cliques form. But the discrimination policies are very clear. The expectations for how to behave and communicate in the community are super clear as well. Some extra sources of information. So the county and city websites are very, they have a lot of information on them, the city directory. I haven't gotten a telephone book in a really long time. I guess they probably still make them. But everything is really available online. The minutes of the school board meetings, the minutes of the commissioner meetings, everything you have access to and you can find. Some power structures. The city really does work well with businesses and the district. Our community is a very partnership-centered community, so it's very respectful. We're all involved with each other, and it's really positive in that way. The power structure, kind of continuing on. Sometimes it's aligned with political parties, like I said, the county leaders more than the city leaders, but all entities work really well together to create policies and procedures to avoid power struggles, I suppose. Some multicultural issues. Leaders address this frequently. The high school gets connected to some multicultural issues a lot because our mascot is the Indian. And so that comes up every once in a while over the mascot, and our community has addressed it kind of in a educational setting that we are going to keep the mascot, but educate our community and our population and do things for the Native American tribes that are around us. And so that's kind of the direction that we took that issue with, which it's new, but it's successful at this point. Measuring public opinion. Our city loves to do surveys and polls and discussing with the community and all of that. Public opinion surveys online and paper through the district, through the city, through the businesses. Manhattan is really involved when it comes to sharing opinions. So that's kind of a look at the Manhattan community. A lot goes into our district from the community because it is such a partnership centered at the core of who we are. So thank you for watching.